action.
Lawrence, what are your earliest memories of Silloth Airfield?
Well, my earliest memories of life itself are connected with Silloth Airfield, born in '35, and they were knocking hedges out with bulldozers in 1938, and that's the earliest thing I can remember at all. Huge D8 caterpillars, etc., and then from then on it was building hangars, runways and all the rest of it, and all the contractors, men and equipment. So it was a dramatic start, if you like, to life for me, and indeed the airfield. The start of the airfield, I did see the man, Gilbert Baird is his name, from Kelso, and he was on Silloth Farm, which is now the D.A. Harrison not blockmaking, the stillage part down in the airfield, and they were on that farm, and I knew they'd been on that farm just about 15 years ago. I saw him at a funeral down here, and I said, "Can you tell me what happened at the very start of Silloth Airfield?" He says, "I can tell you absolutely." He said there was one in the spring of '38, a car drew up with 4 gentlemen in it with dark suits, and there to see Mr. Baird, which was his father. And as it happened, he was very ill at that time upstairs, and they said, "Well, they must see him." And he said, "Well, wait here and I'll go and tell him." So I went to him, and the father said, "Well, you'll just have to work on my behalf, I just can't." So I went down, and they said, "Well, we're here to commandeer the farm. You'll be able to use the grassland until the bulldozers arrive, but anything else stops now." And that was spring of '38, and then, as I say, autumn '38, they were knocking the hedges out and building the airfield.
Right, so where, after the airfield was built, where did the RAF personnel come from?
Well, I can only say all over the country, really, with these big contractors. The two ones I remember was Cunliffe Owens and Costains, and of course huge employment compared with what Silloth had before the war, so a different place altogether.
And do you know where the RAF personnel and the airfield workers who came into Silloth, where were they billeted? Were they in different areas?
There were huts, specially built, I say huts, with brick-built huts around the town. There's about 3 or 4 sites, as well as such as the school, the senior school here at Silloth. Aircraft personnel were billeted in it. But as for the other workers, etc., the whole of Silloth took people in, and there were very few houses that didn't have people in that were to do with the war.
And did some of the officers, were they billeted in a separate place from, did they get better accommodation, for example, like hotel?
They weren't with, all I can remember is that I don't remember they were with the workers. So they were on their own, the RAF people. Yeah. But there were various sites around the town. Indeed, some of them are still there to this day. They're known as the squatters now. The reason they're known as the squatters, they're not used for housing now, but after the war, Wigton District Council were dragging their feet terribly. People were desperate for accommodation after the war, when it had ended, and these places where the RAF personnel had been were left empty. So finally 1 or 2 families in Silloth took law into their own hands, and they literally went and squatted in them, and that's how they came to be known as the squatters. But they were left in them, and they were used from then on by families for a number of years.
Yeah. And did the air personnel, did the guys who came to work in the airfield, did they mix with local people, or did they keep themselves to themselves mainly?
I can't think they kept themselves to themselves, no, because there was local men as well, certainly working with the contractors' men, And I don't remember them complaining that they were, you know, us and them. So I can only say I think they worked together.
Great. And what kind of aircraft do you remember actually being at the airfield?
Well, the most vivid, of course, is the Hudson and Spitfires, Hurricanes. There was Dakotas. Towards the end of the war, there was a few Lancasters. Indeed, part of the airfield, to the edge of the main road to Causeway Head, the pilots insisted that the hedges were taken out at the end of the main runway because they were too near it when they were taken off. So the hedges were taken out to allow them to take off and land easier. And indeed, for a while there was traffic lights on those. And when, I suppose, when they knew they were going to be doing it, you know, the road traffic was stopped.
And did you play at the airfield as a child, and was there very much security there?
There was certainly security. The wardens' houses are all around the airfield, the aerodrome wardens' houses, they were semis. And yes, but boys being boys, and as I said, I was only 10 when the war finished. But we did, living out in the country, just a mile and a half out of Silloth, we did get to go in through the perimeter fence now and again, and when aircraft were parked around the perimeter, as they were parked all over the place really, and we knew the system, i.e. the wardens used to cycle round and stop at each sort of site where these aircraft were, and then on, and well, when they went on, we tended to have a look. I don't remember being caught either, but that wasn't just myself, there was 4 or 5 of us. So that was, well, exciting if you like. It was exciting to be in the aircraft for a start. That was maybe more towards the end when there were quite a lot of planes that had to be scrapped. Not so much when the war was at its height.
Yeah.
That was towards the end.
Yeah. And do you remember any particular incidents or accidents?
Yeah, vividly. In '43, a Lockheed Hudson crashed on takeoff and towards Calvo, and we were living at Hartlow Farm then, which was on the edge of the airfield, and it crashed on takeoff in '43, January '43, and burst into flames. Now obviously I was only about 8 then, 7, 8, but a huge explosion and burst into flames, and the Lockheed Hudson, the wheel struts are directly under the fuel tanks, and if the wheels are still down when something like that happens, there's literally no chance, and they apparently weren't the safest aircraft to get out of once something drastic had happened. So these 4 men unfortunately perished, and 3 of them are in Causeway Head Cemetery. Now one of them is Sergeant Observer Frank Charles Joubry, and a friend in Silloth, Bill Allen, keen on the computer, etc., and he looked up some of these families, and he looked up the ones that had been in that accident, and he got into good contact with this Joubry in Canada. They lived in Canada, and so having had the correspondence, he told the family that I had witnessed the crash, and so they said they would be coming to England, and which they did eventually, and they said they would like to meet me if they could. So that was arranged when they did come, and then we went to the cemetery down at Causeway Head, and his sister, this Sergeant Joubry's sister, and I stood by the grave, and she laid a wreath, and she sprinkled soil on it that she had brought from Canada especially for this occasion, and I've got to say, it was emotional, it really was.
Yeah.
But she wasn't on her own, she had family with her as well that stood around, you know. So that was the most memorable one. The other was a Wellington bomber. He crashed in, I think it was 44, behind Meadow Lodge. And the reason I remember it well, there was no loss of life there. It crashed and it landed up in a gateway to the field. Now that wouldn't have mattered much, but Father had 2 or 3 ponies, and he had taken the field for the ponies, and this thing was crashed in the gateway and trapped the ponies in the field. And they said, oh, you needn't worry, we'll have it moved in a couple of days. Well, it was a couple of weeks at least before it was moved. So, however, it wasn't the end of the world, that. I mean, the ponies were trapped. But there was no loss of life with that one.
Mm.
But yes, you know, that was another way of the explosion when it came down, but it didn't take fire.
Mm. And there's an area in Silloth that's become known as Hudson Bay. Why was that? Well,
that's the Solway Firth there, out in front of, you know, between Silloth and across the water to Dumfries and Cripple, etc. And as well as being a maintenance unit, of course, Silloth was aircrew training as well. And they were constantly doing circuits and bumps, as they were called, both for aircrew training and for testing the aircraft after they'd worked on them. So it was circuits and bumps. Now, heaven knows why, but quite a number of Lockheeds did come down in the Solway Firth. And it didn't take long for the aircrew to christen Hudson Bay because of that.
Mm.
There was crashes with other aircraft as well, of course there was, but the Hudson seemed to be the one that caught the imagination of people.
Mm. And can you remember, was Silloth Airfield, Silloth bombed during the war, either the airfield or the town?
Yes, there were some, and not many. The memorable one for me was Causeway Head Cemetery. Again, a bomb hit it, now obviously meant for the hangars, etc., near Causeway Head Church, but it hit the cemetery. And I remember again as a boy going, 1 or 2 of us, and not a nice sight at all, because we shouldn't have been there. Again, we shouldn't, but we were looking in the hole where the bomb had blasted, and you know, there was evidence of coffins. Well, that's no good either, is it? Another one was at Little Lee's Corner, where Stannick's Park Holiday Park is. There was a bomb drop there. It blasted all the windows out of the farmhouse that stood on where their site is now. But again, there wasn't loss of life. So
it was very lucky.
It was. The talk was that even the 2 that did drop bombs here were probably rather lost, and rather than take the bombs back to Germany or wherever, get rid of them. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, because I've seen a map that Germany supplied of the airfield early on in the war, so they knew exactly where it was, where the runways was, and everything to do with it. Mm-hmm. So it maybe wasn't, you know, getting rid of them, maybe an attempt to do it.
Yeah. And excuse me, sorry, we can edit that out. What happened to the aircraft after the war, do you know?
Yes, there was a lot of aircraft that were broken up here and salvaged, both on the airfield and then down by the dockside. And there was a lot of aircraft scrapped by the dockside and then loaded into boats. I don't know where they took that salvage, but there was a lot of that went on, a big lot.
Mm.
Yeah.
And do you know what happened on the airfield after the war ended? Did the airfield continue to operate?
It did for a while, in a small way, because I mean, again, used for the salvage work, so aircraft were being flown in and then broken up after they were flown in. There was 1 or 2 commercial flights. I remember going to the Isle of Man myself, to the TT races with a commercial flight, which was a bit, well, memorable as well, because a very small aircraft, name escapes me. However, about 8-10 passengers, but it was, a day visit to the TT races, and another one was memorable for the wrong reason. A day visit to the TT races, and the mist came down and there was no racing, but we had to come back.
Oh dear. And can you remember, was there a home guard in Silloth at all? And what did they do?
I can't accurately answer what did they do, but there was. But
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't answer accurately what they did.
Yeah. And do you know anything about the women who worked in the Air Transport Auxiliary, or even the men, in fact?
Well, I had a cousin, a female cousin definitely did, and she was down in the NAFI on the airfield. Again, happy enough to work there, yeah.
And were women in Silloth, do you know, did they join the Land Army, or? There
were some,
yeah.
There were some indeed. It was a bit, maybe a bit the other way around as well. That when the Land Army came into the Silloth area, then they found a partner in Silloth and remained here. So there was a few of that, yeah. And an incident, this was after the war, 47, March 47, the biggest snow there's ever been in Silloth. Well, in my lifetime, that's going back a bit maybe. It was cut off, Silloth was completely cut off, both rail and road. This was in the main due to the high hedges between Kingside Hill and Calver Corner, and then Causeway Head to Silloth, the high hedges. The snow blew in and filled the road, 6 foot deep, that sort of thing. And no mechanical means of moving it. It was to be moved by hand, put into lorries and carted away. So that took time. So the Land Army, who were billeted in the rectory at Causeway Head, would walk, because we knew there were provisions at Abbeytown. They would walk and get some more provisions from there. Now, one or two of them knew, well, my family more than myself, but they knew, and they said, could I go with them and guide them through the fields, because you couldn't go by the road, it was 6 foot deep. So we went over the fields. And we knew the fields fairly well, i.e. if you stepped over the hedge, we knew there was a gutter at the other side, so you didn't go overhead in snow, etc. So I went with the Land Army women to Abbeytown and got provisions and came back again. And one of the main items on the list for that was cigarettes. It wasn't just bread.
Yeah. And do you know if there was live ammunition used at the airfield, or was it?
I don't know exactly, but what I assume it was, especially when the aircraft guns were being tested. They were tested and lined up in front of a huge bank of sand. The huge bank of sand was behind a brick wall, and there were at least 2 sites, one at Causeway Head again, and as I say, they were lined up and fired the guns a lot. Now I think that would be live, because unless the non-live ammunition makes as much noise as the live, I don't know, but it was certainly noisy.
Yeah, and that might come in via the railway, of course, into Silloth from Carlisle.
It was
possibly.
Well, they put
the ammunition.
Well, the 2 sites I'm talking about where they did test, no, they weren't facing the railway at all. They were the other way on.
Okay. And in terms of people being protected, were there dugouts made, or what was in Silloth?
Yes.
That people could be protected?
They have a name, really. There were concrete panels, rather like walking through a corridor with a circular roof, and then soil and etc. piled up, just as if it was part of the field. But there was this shelter in behind. Incidentally, during the war at home we had what's known as a Morrison shelter, and it acted as the kitchen table, and it had strong angle irons at each corner, and if the siren went at all, which wasn't that often, but it did now and again, and even in the country we could hear it, you were to dive under the table, as it were, but it was a special built Morrison shelter.
Yeah. And I mean, the green looks absolutely beautiful just now, but was the green used in any way during the war? Was there anything
again,
in there?
I don't remember it being used in anything special. When you see the film of all the RAF personnel doing the march past, the green looks similar to what it does today, really.
Oh, very good. Yeah. Yeah. Did any evacuees live in or near Silloth, and did you communicate with them? Were you friends with them? Did you get to know them?
Well, it was a short story, rather unfortunate really, but we did have 3 evacuees with us at this farmhouse that was rented, by the way, at Hartlow, outside Silloth, and they weren't there that long. When unfortunately they and brother and myself all got impetigo. Now the mother couldn't cope and they had to go elsewhere. Now unfortunately, and I wish it hadn't happened, unfortunately we didn't keep in touch with them after, which is a mistake really.
And I don't know if you know this or not, but were there any so-called enemies, German or Italian people living in Silloth?
Well, of course there was the prisoners of war, both Italian and German. Now, my wife's family, Lightfoot's at Smart Hill Abbey Town, they had a German, worked on their farm for 2 or 3 years, and he became a personal friend of the family. Now he was billeted at Abbey Town. There was a site at Abbey Town beside what's now the school, the new school at Abbey Town. It was near there. The trusty ones, and there were a few of them, were allowed to cycle back and forward to the farm. The rest were taken in a truck to the farms in the morning and then collected at night and taken back to the village. Now this one I'm talking about at my wife's family farm became a family friend, as I've said. So much so as after the war they exchanged Christmas cards for a number of years. Now unfortunately he did die, and it was only after he died that his wife over in Germany corresponded quite a lot, and consequently finished up with wife and I going over to their house, and tremendous reception. That was near Hamburg. And since then her family have visited here, and they were taken up to the farm, and Mary's brother Robert said, "Now that seat there in the corners where your dad sat for 2 or 3 years," and I'm afraid it was very emotional.
I can understand that, yeah. I think there were a lot of friendships made during the war with so-called enemies, and you know, different stories being told.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It was very few that were bitter and twisted, you know, of the prisoners. Very few, in my opinion.
Yeah. So I know you had to register for rations during the war. Can you remember what kind of effect that had, and what food you used, and how did you manage at that time?
I shouldn't laugh, but we in the country didn't take much harm, I've got to say. A, we had hens, B, we would butcher pig now and again, So we didn't take much. There was the rationing, yes there was, of course there was. And you couldn't get any more sugar than you should have had, or butter or whatever. Bananas were an absolute luxury, I remember. But incident with my mother during the war, the air personnel would get to know who might give them a dozen eggs or something to take home, but that was black market and it wasn't supposed to happen. However, they would come now and again, knock on the door, and a soft soap, well, genuine one, going home to the family for the first time in months maybe, you know, a long way away, maybe Manchester, Newcastle, wherever. And this happened one day, and I wasn't very old, I was probably 7 or 8 I guess, and knocked at the door, and I was there and stood behind mother, and this story came, they were going home for the weekend, and could she ever do it, well, she actually said, no, I'm not supposed to do this though, I'm sorry, oh come on, and finally she relented. Well, she turned to go and get this dozen eggs or so, and the voice behind, I'll never forget it, we want no eggs. And they turned out to be inspectors, and they were inspecting on behalf of the Ministry of Black Market, you know, and trying to stop black market, etc., etc. And she was warned quite severely, no more of this or you'll be in trouble, real trouble. So, and oh, it affected her much that day, because she was
so sad.
She was, you know, a sympathetic person. And,
So,
sorry?
I
I think this is maybe the point when I should tell you the story. Father and mother, during the war, years, they got on very well, I've got to say that. But now and again, people have arguments, don't they? We all know that. And this one was rather nasty. I don't know what it was over, but they fell out big style. And that night, I had a nightmare, screaming, etc. And the body in the nightmare was none other than Hitler. And Hitler had a yellow jumper on that my father had on during the day, so I think it showed which side I was coming down on.
It affected you emotionally then?
Can I say at this point as well, to brought back memories, the Spar shop in Silloth here now was the majestic picture house during the war and after. And you had 3 films per week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Friday, Saturday was the same. But there was a matinee, Saturday afternoons. Now occasionally as young boys we would manage to come to the matinee on the Saturday afternoon. Now the reason I'm mentioning this is that in the showing of the matinee there was the Patty newsreel. Now that was our only real insight to what was happening in the war, because we were saddled with only the wireless, as it was called, with the 2 batteries, the wet battery and the dry battery. The wet one, you had 2 of them, and you got one charged while the other was on the wireless. Brought it into Silloth and had the spare one charged up. So, as I say, that was the only real insight. I mean, as I say, wireless and daily paper were the main sources of information that we had about the war.
And I guess there were celebrations when it was announced that the war had ended.
Yeah, yes. I mean, it was terrific relief, because, I mean, I personally remember well, towards the end of the war, we thought, well, you know, we're on the right road here, it's going to end soon. And then Germany came with the V1 and the V2 rockets. Well, they didn't turn out to be that fantastic maybe, but the image in your mind was, if they can do these guided bombs with nobody on them, you know, is the thing going to turn again?
So there was a lot of fear around.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Well, in my opinion, yeah, it affected me anyway.
Yeah.
this V1 and V2 rockets.
Yeah.
Mm.
So when the war actually ended, were there street parties, or was it just kind of a non-event, really?
Certainly it was more than another event. I don't remember actually being a street party, which did happen in various places. I don't remember them itself. There might have been, but I don't remember them.
Okay. I think that's all I've got to ask at the minute, but if you can think of any other stories that you want to tell, we could just do them separately.
There's a little bit then about, as I told you, we were at Hartlow Farm, rented a mile and a half out of Silloth on the edge of the airfield. And I remember distinctly the exercises with the defenders, if you like, of the airfield and others, mock battles. And they had all the gear on, and now it certainly wasn't live ammunition. They had rifles, etc. And I remember they built bits of rhododendron bushes off in the garden where there was quite a lot, and stuck those in tin helmets that had net on top of the tin helmet. So that was fascinating, like for a young boy, you know, to look out, and there was one lot coming over Carver Hill, and the other was defending, if you like. So yeah, that brings to mind as well, there were 2 checkpoints. We had passes actually to come into Silloth, being out in the country, and there was checkpoints on Calver Hill, as it was then. That hill has been lowered since, when the road was lowered a bit. It wasn't a massive hill, but it was higher than it is now. And again at Barracks Bridge Corner there was another checkpoint, and you had to show the pass as you went through, you know, to get in or out of Silloth and past the airfield. The other thing I would like to mention is that you were saying about aircraft coming in to be broken up, etc., and indeed during the war moving them in and out. These huge, well, what were huge then to us, Arctic trucks, they were known as Queen Marys, and you had the fuselage of the aircraft in the middle of this Arctic trailer, and on each side of the fuselage was the wings. So it was quite a sight to see.
Yeah. I'm trying not to say too much in between because it kind of interrupts the flow if we're going to use it, but that sounds amazing.
Well, that's to do with it.
Have you got photos of like yourself when you're younger, and your mum and your dad, or?
Well, certainly myself, somewhere, you maybe seen from that other thing.
Yeah. Could we maybe copy some of those, and then we can maybe when we're doing the video we can sort of slot in the photo, and have you got photos of your mum and dad as well? And any of Silloth around that time? And
they were very rare, mind, to just go out with a camera in the early days. It was rare. But there is some. We'll have to get right involved and have a look. She's the one that stores them all away.
Well, it'd be great if there were any photos at all of the, you know, the town and the airfield at any point during the war, because that we could interject that quite easily with what you're saying. And those big trucks that had the airplanes on, I don't suppose we might be able to
there must be photographs of them.
Yeah.
Because I mean they were a common
that's
sight.
right. I'll have a search.
They were a common sight.
Yeah, I'll have a search for
they were known as Queen Marys at the time.
I can remember the Queen Marys.
Can you?
Massive, with a lattice side.
That's right.
And they were towed behind a truck. like the articulate
Ah.
trucks we have now, but they were open.
Yeah.
You used to see this going on with an aeroplane on it, and there were big
Yeah,
wings.
yeah.
And like Lawrence said, there were
Yeah.
fuselage with
Yeah.
2 wings each side.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, amazing sight, yeah.
But I mean, some of the aircraft would be flown in Silloth, and some
Yeah.
would be.
Yeah, and others
Yeah.
transported. I'm sure that some they were using during the war came in on these Queen Marys as well.
Yeah.
Wasn't just the ones to be broken up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's. I hope I wasn't making it too stilty by asking the
No,
questions,
no, it
but
isn't. It
that's good.
It made
Good.
me concentrate the mind on certain things.
Yeah. Is it turned off now, or is it still on?